This is Movie Night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Action Movie Month is quickly becoming Action Movie whenever the hell I get around to posting, but no matter, we'll continue with a second look at the James Bond franchise, 5 of which I already reviewed back in 2012. There's strong rumors that current franchise lead Daniel Craig has played the 00 agent for the final time, so tonight we'll take a look back at how his predecessors fared in their final outings. Coincidentally, 4 of tonight's pictures also feature large snow-related sequences and are generally regarded as each actor's worst entry. Beginning in chronological order, here's my review of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The black sheep of the franchise still delivers a fun time. Directed by Peter R. Hunt, the 6th entry in the James Bond series was released in December of 1969 and would go on to earn more than 9 times its $7 million budget. The 142-minute spy film sees the British secret agent romancing a mob boss's daughter while attempting to uncover the nefarious plans of his nemesis, Blofeld. Following Sean Connery's decision to retire from the role, producers Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli cast an unknown actor and model for the lead role, George Lazenby. Selecting someone purely on appearance with no prior acting history to star in a multi-million-dollar action film is an ambitious, almost foolhardy gamble. And while Lazenby isn't outright bad, he's just entirely forgettable. Oftentimes, the actor feels uncomfortable or unsure of himself, a far cry from the aggressive confidence Connery brought to the role. Looking the part simply isn't enough. He has to embody the charisma and personality of Ian Fleming's iconic character, and unfortunately, he doesn't. In an ill-advised attempt to poke fun at this casting switch, the cold open of the movie ends with Lazenby spiking the camera and remarking, "This never happened to the other fellow." To date, it's the only time in the 50-year-old series that the fourth wall has been broken. Diana Rigg portrays his love interest, but is missing the same charisma and personality to be provocative or fascinating. Their relationship is simply too informal, with both parties seeming disinterested instead of infatuated, which might be excusable if their courtship didn't suddenly end in holy matrimony by the picture's end. As one of many to play the role, Telly Savalas is better than most as the leader of Spectre, who is afforded the opportunity to be more physical and involved with the character than other actors. Although the use of projection screens and day-for-night photography dates the sequence, a downhill ski chase is particularly thrilling, as Bond weaves between trees and over jumps to escape pursuing enemies. The classic theme from Monty Norman is heard, without alteration, during an exciting takeover of a Swiss Alps hideout, but the sound is so famous and incorporated so superficially that it seems like a distracting afterthought, especially since there's a great moment for Rigg to dispatch a bad guy right on the ending crescendo of the song, but instead the abrupt abbreviation feels like an editing mistake. And even though this music is often added without any dramatic timing in mind, John Barry's score is quite excellent, especially the titular number, a driving and aggressive orchestral theme heavy on horns and strings. It remains a quintessential anthem for the character and one of my all-time favorites from the series. The cinematography is decidedly simplistic, nothing showy or distracting, while the film's pacing, although slow, is appropriate for the tone of the picture and the era it was produced. The audio work, however, especially in regards to the dialogue, feels very clumsy, with several lines being the obvious result of poorly synchronized ADR. For a multitude of reasons, including poor reception from the public and tension with the producers, Lazenby opted not to reprise his role, and is the only actor to play the character only once. For his debut effort, OHMSS isn't terrible, and I'd certainly be curious to see what would have been had he stayed. A slower, more tragic Bond picture with a few great action sequences only make this a decent film, but it's the surprisingly downbeat ending that makes it worth seeing at least once. On Her Majesty's Secret Service strays too much from the familiar to be memorable or exciting. Now let's go to the YouTube reviews. Seems I'm in the minority, as most praise this film as an underrated gem, scoring it an 8 out of 10. Can't say I agree, so I'm scoring this an alright. Next up, let's discuss Diamonds Are Forever. Not only is this Sean Connery's final official appearance as the British agent, it's also his worst. The second of 4 James Bond movies directed by Guy Hamilton, this $7.2 million production was a smash hit, grossing over $100 million in profit after its December 1971 premiere. When a diamond smuggling investigation leads him to Las Vegas, 007 uncovers an evil plot involving a rich business tycoon. A detailed search into the corporate interests of a diamond mine is definitely one of the less exciting plots for a Bond picture, and it's also kind of hard to follow. Coaxed back into the lead role by a then record $1.25 million salary, Connery is perfectly relaxed when cracking jokes, but his age is definitely noticeable during the few moments of physical activity. Fortunately for him, the PG-rated flick doesn't feature any true action until the halfway point, when Bond steals a moon buggy from what appears to be a TV studio that faked the moon landings. The hand-to-hand combat meanwhile feels particularly clumsy, as all of the punches and throws seem overly choreographed. It's also disappointing to see this skilled secret agent incapacitated on 3 separate occasions. It's a miracle of convenience and timing that the character remains alive at all. The spy fare and gadgetry is somewhat fascinating, however, as the 7th installment of the James Bond series is more of a slow-burning espionage thriller than the explosive adventures the series later became. When a sexy craps player introduces herself as Plenty O'Toole, Connery smugly and appropriately replies, "But of course you are." Bond's perennial adversary, Ernst Blofeld, is played rather memorably by Charles Gray. His cocksure arrogance and leisurely attitude makes him an effective villain. But more astute fans will recognize Gray from the 5th Bond picture, You Only Live Twice, where he played a completely separate character. Recasting him just 2 movies later is a blatant disregard for continuity, but honestly, in this series, ignoring what came before is basically par for the course. Jill St. John shows off plenty of skin as the uniquely named Tiffany Case, but is too ditzy and underused to leave an impression. The usual trio from MI6 return, Bernard Lee, Louis Maxwell, and Desmond Llewellyn, who do sufficient work in their thanklessly small roles. Bruce Glover and Putter Smith need to be singled out as the picture's more enduring characters. They're a creepy, soft-spoken duo who enjoy holding hands, blowing up helicopters, and constantly referring to each other as Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint.
Stop right there. Who are you?
Dr. Tynan sent us.
Why didn't he come himself?
He was taken sick. Bitten by the bug. He sent this for you.
If God had wanted man to fly,
He would have given him wings, Mr. Kidd.
With the exception of returning vocalist Shirley Bassey's rendition of the title theme, much of the music in this 120-minute film is either out of place or downright irritating, especially the oft-repeated leitmotif for the aforementioned creepers. Other sections awkwardly unravel in total silence. From the plaid brown suits to unnecessary establishing shots of large hovercrafts, this movie looks and feels very dated today, more so than Connery's earlier pictures. Despite its confusing plot, lethargic pacing, boring action, and overly campy tone, I still have fond memories staying up past my bedtime to watch this film during TBS's yearly marathons in the 1990s. If we're being honest though, if I wasn't old enough to stay up past 10, I probably wasn't old enough to recognize this film's many flaws. Required viewing for completionists, but hardly worth watching for anyone else, Diamonds Are Forever is a slow and uninteresting story, too silly to be exciting. Here's what you had to say about it in the YouTube comments.
Diamonds are forever, sparkling round my little finger. Unlike men, the diamonds linger.
Poor performances and a campy tone resulted in a 5 from the audience and a 4 from me. Now my review of A View to a Kill. One thoughtless casting decision all but sinks this otherwise enjoyable picture. The 3rd Bond movie directed by John Glenn, this action spy film earned over 5 times its $30 million budget when it was released in the summer of 1985. The 131-minute plot, which borrows many elements from Goldfinger, follows Bond's inconsistently focused quest to thwart a mad industrialist who was hell-bent on flooding Silicon Valley for financial gain. Perpetual weirdo Christopher Walken portrays the primary antagonist and is perfect as the erratic villain, a product of genetic experiments by the Nazis. His Walken-esque delivery is strangely suited for the role, and he remains a strong highlight from this otherwise messy production. Tanya Roberts is frankly annoying as a high-pitched female that needs rescuing, while Grace Jones is frightening and intriguing as a strong, no-nonsense henchwoman. The usual array of allies and accomplices float in and out of the story, including Louis Maxwell in her final appearance as Moneypenny, and Dolph Lundgren's first on-screen role as an extra. Last and also least is our lead actor, the 58-year-old Roger Moore, who is badly miscast in his record-setting 7th appearance as the suave secret agent. The fact that he was nearly 20 years older than all of his co-stars should have been a clear sign to Eon Productions that he was ill-suited to continue. The producers instead employed the work of multiple stunt doubles whenever Bond needed to jump off a bridge or hang from a fire truck. So while they may not have asked their aging actor to perform any dangerous physical activity, they did implicitly ask the audience to go along with it.
Sit down. What's this loaded with?
Rock salt.
Now you tell me.
The snowy cold open, in which Bond inadvertently invents snowboarding while a knockoff version of the Beach Boys' California Girls plays, was shot entirely with body doubles. Moore never even visited Iceland. He instead filmed his portion on an obvious soundstage. Ultimately, the heavy reliance on much younger and athletic stunt doubles is distracting and embarrassing. Now, I've always enjoyed Roger's outings more for their humor and levity, but even there, this PG-rated film falls flat. Commenting on a morning time horse ride, he quips, "Well, I'm an early riser myself." It's one of the more groan-inducing quotes in the picture, but truthfully, most of the dialogue is just as hammy. With such excellent one-liners, it's remarkable that Bond beds a record 4 separate women in this picture. But watching Moore seduce females that are half his age is often uncomfortable, and after establishing a sort of father-daughter relationship with one character, it's also disturbing. When he learned he was older than his romantic co-star's mother, even Roger himself knew it was time to end his run. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of roles in Hollywood for older men, certainly more so than women. Individuals like Liam Neeson have proven that smaller scale action movies are possible for men in their 60s, but sadly that is not the case with A View to a Kill. Moore's age and his general lack of participation or enthusiasm is the film's death knell. But while we're on the subject of giant mistakes, the first half of this picture, a 45-minute plot thread about cheating at horse racing, goes absolutely nowhere. Why an international spy would be interested in such frivolous crimes is never adequately explained, nor does the narrative arc ever truly get resolved or even feed into the rest of the picture. It just exists, without enjoyment or purpose. All that being said, there are a few things here that really work, especially the music. Duran Duran's title theme might be one of the best in the series catalog, and indeed was the only Bond theme to reach #1 on the Billboard charts. The recycled motifs of this theme, sprinkled throughout the film by composer John Barry, also work surprisingly well. From base jumping off the Eiffel Tower to splitting a car in half, twice, this movie also boasts some rather great action sequences. The biggest set piece, an explosive flooding of an underground mine, feels like an awesome Universal Studios attraction. Some of the projection screen work, especially during the high-stakes climax atop the Golden Gate Bridge, isn't particularly convincing, but most of the effects and action remain believable. Now, if I'm being honest, this movie is not objectively very good. But for Bond fans, A View to a Kill is cheesy 80s entertainment with some really great stunts. Here's what you had to say about it.
Choice for you is the view to a kill. Between the shades assassinate.
With Christopher Walken cited as the picture's only saving grace, you thought this film was just meh. I still kind of enjoy this one, so I'll score it an alright. Now, a quick word about tonight's sponsor. Next weekend, the Oscars will once again honor the best movies of the year. But if you haven't watched them yet, fret not. Movies On Demand has many of the nominees available to order. This is the place to go for brand new films, available months before other streaming services like Netflix or Amazon. And the best part is you already have access to it through your cable box. Plus, Movie Night has teamed up with them to host a special Oscars pool. The top 6 winners will each receive $5 in cable cash, so you can order that HD version of The Martian without having to pay for it. Click the link below to check it out and place your votes. These quick promotions help make the show possible, so thanks for listening. And good luck in the Oscars pool. Back to the reviews, let's review Die Another Day. The film when the James Bond series finally went off the rails. This $142 million movie from director Lee Tamahori may have received mixed reviews upon release, but it still pulled in over $430 million. The 20th entry in the series premiered in November of 2002, 4 decades after the inaugural effort Dr. No. In fact, to celebrate the franchise's 40th anniversary, this movie reportedly contains references to each of the previous 19 chapters. The PG-13 rated action spy film starts off uncharacteristically dark. James Bond, portrayed by Pierce Brosnan in his 4th and final appearance, is captured in North Korea when an assignment goes bad. While the audience listens to the distracting techno music of Madonna's titular theme song, poor Bond is constantly being tortured and abused. Upon his release from captivity, the 2-hour and 13-minute narrative has him investigating the connection between a diamond mogul and a terrorist who wants to weaponize his satellite to take out his competition. Seriously, what is it with this franchise and weaponized satellites? Full disclosure here, Brosnan has always been my favorite Bond. Perhaps it's a bias of nostalgia because he's the actor I grew up watching, or maybe it's because he's able to balance the action, humor, and sex appeal of the lead character so effortlessly, but either way he once again excels here. Even when the script becomes particularly goofy and unrealistic towards the end, Brosnan maintains the essence and determination that makes his portrayal so effective. Alongside him are two of the sexiest women to ever play the role of Bond girl, the voluptuous Halle Berry and the exquisitely beautiful Rosamund Pike in her feature film debut. Both are quick to disrobe for 007 and the audience certainly benefits from that. Elsewhere in the cast, Colin Salmon, Judi Dench, John Cleese, and Samantha Bond all reprise their roles from previous pictures, rounding out the ensemble with thankless performances. Toby Stephens portrays the English baddie and is appropriately menacing and insufferable with his arrogance, remarking on his dangerous lifestyle. It's only by being on the edge that we know who we really are. Now, I normally don't do this, but it's unfortunately necessary to spoil one of the film's biggest twists in order to explain my next criticism, so consider yourself warned. We learn later that Stephens is actually the same North Korean that Bond defeated before his capture. The film would have greatly benefited from a quick flashback illustrating how he survived his run-in with Bond and how he altered his appearance so convincingly. But not only is his face-off-like transformation left largely unexplained, it's also a bit offensive. Is the thought of an Asian actor playing your lead villain so unconscionable you have to replace him with a smug Brit? This central plot reveal is completely unbelievable and amounts to nothing more than a cheap gimmick. The first half of the feature is actually incredibly strong though. Bond's time as a POW and his decision to seek revenge gives the film a very emotional feel. Plus, the action is well executed, the script well plotted, and the stakes are quite personal. After the 60-minute mark, however, everything goes tits up. Bond arrives at an impossibly lavish ice castle in an invisible car just after using magic sunglasses that replicate the effects of Star Trek's holodeck. Moments later, he has a fistfight in the middle of a pointlessly complex deadly laser grid, and minutes after that, he uses the upturned windshield of a rocket sled to windsurf escape from a tidal wave which has been caused by Stephens' orbiting death ray, which he controls with an ugly Nintendo Power Glove. It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. On the plus side, it's the failure of this style that led directly to the stripped-down, more realistic approach the series took with the next installment, Casino Royale, which everyone agrees was a great decision. Besides the goofy gadgets and poor CGI visuals, even the characters are making dumb mistakes, like when Brosnan discovers himself vulnerable after firing an unloaded weapon. Are we really meant to believe an international secret agent can't tell when his own firearm is empty? It's just lazy, convenient writing, and more so than usual for this franchise. All that being said, this movie isn't quite as bad as its reputation suggests. David Arnold's score keeps things suspenseful, the cast do a great job with the sillier material, and most of the action sequences are genuinely thrilling. One of the last true action movies of the 90s style, this remains a guilty pleasure for me, and all fans of James Bond or Halle Berry in a bikini should find something to enjoy. Die Another Day approaches the absurd, but its more serious moments prevent mediocrity. Here are some thoughts from the movie night audience. On this outing, we mostly agreed. Despite the cheesy, over-the-top style, it's still a pretty fun action film. You thought it was good, and I'll score it a cool myself. Finally tonight, a proper production of my previous release review of Spectre. Premiering in London on October 26, 2015, the 24th James Bond film is, in a word, underwhelming. Its immediate predecessor, Skyfall, was a critical darling and a smashing success, earning over $1 billion worldwide to become the most successful entry in the 50-year-old franchise. And perhaps more important to the context of this review, it's also my favorite Bond picture. Then there's Spectre, which despite returning director Sam Mendes' best efforts is ultimately a disappointment. With its massive budget, reportedly close to $300 million, it's also one of the most expensive movies ever produced, and with a daunting scope of action and locations, it's easy to see why. I mean, Bond does more globe-trotting in the PG-13 rated film than Carmen Sandiego. Fortunately for MGM Studios, it still earned almost $900 million at the worldwide box office. The action thriller sees Daniel Craig returning for his 4th outing as the suave British secret agent, tracking down clues to uncover the mystery behind a sinister organization. After opening with the trademark gun barrel sequence, returning to the start of the film where it rightfully belongs, we're treated to a wonderful single-camera move that winds through Mexico City's jubilant Day of the Dead celebration as Craig tracks his next target. This pre-titles cold open sequence is absolutely fantastic, culminating with a harrowing fight for control of a crashing helicopter over a crowd of thousands. Sam Smith's theme song, The Writings on the Wall, goes nicely with the stylish credits, but it never hits that second gear, remaining a decidedly forgetful entry in the long line of hit-or-miss Bond theme songs. Craig looks sharp in his tailored Tom Ford suits and is more confident and relaxed in the role than ever before. He's also a bit of a cheeky bastard, making quips and staying sassy in a portrayal that's closer to Sean Connery's take on the character than his previous attempts. He exudes sex appeal and strength so effortlessly I would probably buy anything he's selling, which is good since the movie is loaded with product placement. Craig is joined by returning players Ralph Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, and Naomi Harris, who turned in great performances in their thanklessly smaller roles. Monica Bellucci appears in an all-too-brief role as a sexy widow, Dave Bautista is frightening as a brawny and quiet henchman, Léa Seydoux is resourceful and gorgeous as the requisite Bond girl, while two-time Academy Award winner Christoph Waltz is featured as a primary antagonist, who turns out to be the familiar villain everyone expected him to be. He doesn't receive a proper introduction until 90 minutes into the film and sadly isn't given much to work with outside of 2 key scenes. But Waltz desperately needed a backstory to establish his credibility. Instead, his threats land like empty promises. He needlessly taunts Bond by revealing, "It was me, James, the author of all your pain." But there's no weight behind these words. A simple flashback explaining his relationship with Bond's tumultuous past is sorely missing. Spectre is supposed to be this nefarious enterprise with global reach, but we're never shown what they're truly capable of, or what their actual motivations are behind torturing some aging 00 agent. The decision to retroactively position this organization as the master architect for all of Bond's previous missions is a huge gamble. While it has the possibility to expertly tie everything together in a meaningful way, thereby strengthening what came before, the result is quite the opposite. It feels rushed and tacked on. It's a failed attempt by the writers to extort an emotional connection out of an empty script. Speaking of extortion, the film's titular acronym is curiously never explained. In earlier movies it stood for Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion. But not anymore, I guess? At 2 hours and 28 minutes, this is the longest picture in the Bond series, and oftentimes it really feels like it. Nothing is outright boring, but huge passages slog on sans urgency. Without a ticking clock or a looming threat, there's hardly any tension during the entire middle hour of the film, which should have been trimmed down substantially. Thankfully, however, when the action does arrive, it's presented in top form. Craig finds himself in one insanely awesome set piece after the next. A high-stakes car chase over the cobblestone alleyways of Rome plays things a bit safe with the 2 sleek supercars, but a mountainside sequence in Austria literally takes the wings right off an airplane. The choreography, stunt work, practical and special effects are all accomplished with expert precision, brought together with clean and easy-to-follow cinematography. A hand-to-hand fight on board a speeding train is particularly well done. But I have to wonder if Bond is still an officer of the Navy and not the Air Force, because he skillfully pilots no less than 3 separate aircraft in this movie. Thomas Newman's heavier score dutifully incorporates plenty of leitmotifs of yesteryear, but the classic Bond theme is never really featured in earnest until the ending credits. An excellent climax set amongst the rubble of the old MI6 headquarters seems to be setting up another direct sequel, but whether Craig will return to the role remains to be seen. James Bond movies are a lot like sex. When it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's still pretty good. Spectre may be an ambitious thrill ride, but its emotional stakes are entirely superficial. Compared to Skyfall, this follow-up is an unfortunate disappointment. A fun and flashy entry in the franchise, I'd rank this one somewhere in the middle. And here's what you had to say about it.
If I risk it all, could you break my fall?
Much like the film itself, criticism was all over the place, with your scores averaging to a 7. I agree, despite its issues, it's still a pretty cool film. Unfortunately, that does it for tonight's episode, but later this week we'll be reviewing all 8 Best Picture nominees in my 5th annual Movie Night Oscar special, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, please click this information icon to watch some related videos, including a secret unlisted review I did of the James Bond documentary, Everything or Nothing. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thanks for watching, and have a good movie night.